I'd like to bring this meeting of the school committee to order and ask all of you to join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Because my clock is 7:10.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going out. It's not 7:10, meeting, and I'm running for the.
At this point, I would like to accept a motion from the school committee to go into executive session to meet with the Board of Selectmen to discuss strategies with relation to collective bargaining.
I'll move it.
Mrs. Burgess moves that motion, second by Ms. Trisselli. Is there any question on that motion? Okay, then we will take the vote. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Burgess?
Yes.
So the school committee will be going into executive session to meet with the Board of Selectmen. At the end of executive session, we will come back out into open session and finish our agenda. Thank you.
The school committee isn't.
Having concluded our executive session, I would now like to bring us back to our agenda. And the first item on our agenda would be, is there anybody attending tonight's meeting who would like to speak to the school committee who isn't already on the agenda?
I have to be added.
Okay, I'm seeing no hands. I now can move to the next item on the agenda, is our student representatives. We will start with North.
Thank you. Plymouth North and South High Schools invite all college-bound students, parents, and guardians to attend the college fair where over 150 universities and the armed forces will be available to speak with. The college fair will be held on Tuesday, October 16th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Plymouth North High School gymnasium. Life Touch Pictures will be having retakes on Friday, November 9th. If you're not able to make the FAFSA workshops on October 3rd, there'll be another FAFSA workshop opportunity on November 1st from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. At this event, the guidance department will help parents and guardians navigate through the FAFSA worksheet, answer questions, reserve your space now by calling the guidance office. Thank you to all the guidance office staff for organizing the SATs and PSATs that were held during the school day on October 10th. A great deal of planning goes into the logistics, and they did a fantastic job. North students were invited to attend an assembly on Thursday, October 11th with Ed Garrity, whose message to students was about seizing your greatness and developing a culture of gratitude, which were main topics of his presentation. Mr. Garrity is a known author and one of the top professional youth speakers and leadership trainers in the United States. Many of the students commented on how motivated they felt after the lecture to have more positivity in their daily life. Congratulations to the girls field hockey team for qualifying for the state tournaments. The student council officers attended the regional and state officer workshops at Holy Cross College in Worcester on Friday, October 12th. This was a great opportunity for our officers to attend various workshops centered around student leadership. The Plymouth High School's combined marching band attended the NESBA New Bedford band competition on Sunday, October 14th. Due to the inclement weather, the life skills and project growth students had postponed their field trip to Sawcheck Farm in Plimpton. The new date for the field trip is Friday, October 19th. Senior Jacqueline Horgan attended and spoke in front of over 600 people at the MAPLTW State Conference at WPI on Friday, October 12th. While at the Project Leads the Way Assembly, she addressed high school achievement in the AP/PLTW recognition. Mr. Grossman is initiating the Tri-M Music Honor Society. Wednesday, October 17th is a half day. We encourage all families to follow us on Twitter and Facebook and to utilize our websites to find out all the happenings at Plymouth North.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's not a girls' field hockey team. I think it's a field hockey team.
Oh, yes, it is a field hockey team.
Okay, Plymouth South.
Yes.
Hi. The PSAT and SAT school day was a success last week as the majority of our juniors and sophomores took the PSATs and the seniors took the SATs. We kicked out the freshmen and they went to one of 3 colleges, which was Mass Maritime, Curry College, or UMass Dartmouth. And then at the end of the day, they all came back and debriefed, and there was really positive feedback about each of the colleges that they went to. The Plymouth Youth Development Collaboration had its monthly meeting last week. PYDC is really active in making students aware of the various destructive decisions that can come up during high school years. Most recently, they have partnered with Mr. Capel in the Arts Department and EDTV to develop new media and art to share the important messages with our students. PYDC has put together a variety of workshops this year at Plymouth South High School, and I will share more about those as those events approach. And they have also set up a lot of programs with the Plymouth Harbor Academy, focusing on social emotional learning activities. South Ave performed this past Saturday at the Haunted Harmonies Festival in Salem. As always, outstanding performances took place, and our students certainly took back a lot of historical information that was shared with them in Salem. The annual college fair will take place at Plymouth South High School in the gymnasium tomorrow night from 6 to 8 p.m. Over 100 colleges, technical institutes, and the U.S. military will be in attendance to meet with our students. We especially encourage our juniors and undecided seniors to visit the college fair. The annual Fall Technical Studies Advisory Meetings and Dinner will take place this week on Thursday. Members from local industries, colleges, and unions, as well as parents and students, meet to discuss the future of each individual program as it relates to the post-secondary opportunities and education that exists for the technical students at Plymouth South High School. This year's guest speaker is a South alum, Sarah Hathaway, who currently is the Director of Technical Education at Blackstone Valley Technical High School. This week is Spirit Week as we lead into our homecoming game versus Pembroke on Friday night. The homecoming court nominees will be introduced, and we also will be recognizing our fall captain from each sport at halftime. This is also senior night for our band, cheer, dance, and football teams. Our homecoming dance is the following Saturday, and tickets are on sale until Thursday. Tickets are $10. Life Touch will be back on campus next Friday, October 26th, for picture makeups. And on Friday next week, we will also have our annual breast cancer awareness fundraiser as South Goes Pink. After raising over $1,000 during the Go Goals fundraiser, South will attempt to hit that goal again on the 26th. And finally, Wednesday is a half day for building choice in service for our staff.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question based on something you said. That college fair has over 100 participants. That's amazing. The guidance department should get a great deal of credit for arranging that. Do families come from out of district to go to that?
They do.
They do, yeah,
Yeah,
they
we-
do, each year. They've
Number.
actually, I know they've modified the kids' schedules too to make sure everyone's free after a couple of different changes. They made a couple of changes this year. they said.
And that's open to Rising Tide and Sacred
Yeah.
Heart? And
Yeah,
The whole,
Okay.
the
The
whole,
whole
yeah,
South
Upper Cape,
Shore.
Lower South
Yeah.
Shore, a lot of,
Excellent.
yeah.
a lot of people
It's a
come.
great night.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for the student rep reports? Okay. Old business, committee members, old business? Any old business to bring up? Okay. New business. Committee members with any to bring thing up onto new business? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Maestas.
Good evening. I have 4 items to report on this evening. I know over the weekend, actually Sunday morning, there was a notice on Facebook. People were talking about a fire alarm going off at Plymouth South High School. There was a fire alarm that went off twice at Plymouth South High School. Had nothing to do with the fire, had nothing to do with water leaking through the building and flooding the building and it getting washed down Route 3. It was relative to a sensor that went off in ductwork. And our custodial staff is actually trying to ascertain exactly where that problem lies. One thing we did find out that type of alarm should not necessarily contact the fire department. It should contact our internal alarm company because it's not a catastrophic issue. So that's something that we're working on now. There are a lot of sensors within these new buildings, and this sensor needs to be adjusted wherever it's in a piece of ductwork somewhere, and they believe they've found it exactly where it's at, and but as of right now, they're they think they have an idea of where this sensor is, where it triggered the alarm. It is not because of any building condition. It's a matter of the sensor having a condition that it set off a trigger, which the fire department came down to the building. So that's what caused that. I also put on your desk tonight, we talk about this from year to year relative to out-of-district placement tuitions. I printed out 4 letters that I received last week that were from schools that are in our region, and you can take a look at the tuitions that they charge, and they have the opportunity to hike their tuitions by about 20%. So you can take a look at what these tuitions are, and I just wanted you to have some level of context as we enter the budget season. Last year, our special education budget had an increase of over $500,000. So keep an eye on some of these tuitions. And I tell you, our out-of-district coordinator in the district really has a job cut out for her. She sits down at every one of these schools. We go over significant plans, but these are students that in many cases have never ever been in the Plymouth Public Schools. They've been in out-of-district schools since their introduction into the school system. So I just wanted you to have a sense of what the tuitions are like for day school and for boarding, because some of the schools that have our students, students actually board there. Okay, so you have a good sense of what tuitions are relative to some of these schools. Just an update on Plymouth South High School construction. We're moving along very nicely. We're very, very close to being complete. Just a small access road, drainage and landscaping that is on the east end of the middle field. That's where the students walk from the parking lot to the school. That is just about done, and it's very, very close. I think what we'll have remaining is punch list items that we'll be working on probably for the next 6 to 8 months, trying to get things wrapped up. Typically, when you build a building, you spend the year after it's built going through it, making sure everything's working right. There's trim pieces that need to be reattached, things of that nature. So those will be happening for, till July 1 and sometimes beyond. But right now, we're making good progress on trying to complete the project. Things are working very, very nicely. And with the rain that we've had, games continue. They can play. They can put multiple teams on one after another, and it really has not stalled some of those issues that we've had in years past. And just a reminder that this Saturday we have town meeting. We'll be meeting at the Plymouth North High School, 7:30 a.m. We'll be in the teachers' dining room in the cafeteria. Once again, here we go, town meeting. It should be a long town meeting. Strong possibility that we'll have town meeting on Monday because of the charter agenda items. Keep in mind that there's a motion right now to move the charter discussion to Monday. So I think there's a move to do that just to get the charter discussion on one day. I don't know if that'll happen, but if the charter discussion does happen on Saturday, the majority of Saturday will be just on the charter. There are many, many provisions for discussion, and this is going to be one of the longest town meetings we've had in a while. So I just have you just be prepared. All right, and that's all I have, Dr.
Thank you.
Sorensen.
And, committee members, questions for the superintendent after his report? Okay. Any correspondence this evening, Mr. Morgan?
No correspondence this evening.
Okay, we're up then to our first council presentation. Dr. Maestas?
Yes, tonight we have Principal Adam Blaisdell, Dr. Blaisdell. He is here tonight for his presentation of the South Elementary School Improvement Plan. He is here with members of his school council. And we want to welcome you to the Plymouth School Committee. And we're sorry that we're getting started later than we normally do. We had a meeting prior, but thank you for your patience.
No problem. You're welcome. Good evening. Before I get started, I wanted to introduce two of my school council members that are with me tonight, Amy Hancock-Ronimus and Crystal Danner. Thank them for coming this evening and joining me. Tonight, what we're going to start with is just a quick overview of just our previous school improvement plan, and just where we had, what we had achieved over the past couple of years. The first goal that we had was really looking at building a culture of leadership. And on this slide, you'll see a couple steps that we had achieved, not achieved, and partially achieved. One of the things that I wanted to mention is one of the things that we've really worked on over the past couple of years is making sure that we have a morning meeting school-wide on a weekly basis where we look at reviewing expectations. A lot of the kids are now starting to run those morning meetings a lot more than the adults, so they're showing leadership that way. Student work is displayed. We do a monthly leadership assembly where the kids kind of look at their peers and they acknowledge their peers. On a survey that we had conducted, parents report being more aware of expectations and reinforce those expectations at home. And there's a lot more leadership roles in the classrooms and in the school. And if you were able to make it to or even watch the video about our ribbon cutting for the sports field in the back, the kids ran that almost completely. So that was. Our second goal got into problem solving, application of skills, and ownership of learning. The students are writing more and more goals. If you come to some of our building, you'll see on the lockers that students are writing goals and looking at and how they'll achieve those goals. One of the other things that's happening is project-based learning. Our kindergarten is really making it a focus at least 3 times a year where they're working with families, some real project-based learning. And they do a lot more of that too as well. Goals are posted around the school and progress is noted as well. So if you came in our first grade, you would see about facts that you'll see ice cream cones and they're showing their progress on ice cream cones. And our third and final goal for our last school improvement plan was looking at community service and having basically each student participate in community service. And we have achieved that. Each grade level has completed at least one community service project. One classroom has really formed a partnership with one of our local nursing homes, and they visited them multiple times a year the past couple of years. And then some of the community service projects are student initiated. So moving on to our new plan, what we've done is we've created a new 3-year plan that is looking at 4 different goals, and we've used school surveys, we used our state MCAS results, district MCAS results, and also additional data that we've taken through the school year. Our first goal is looking at ELA MCAS and looking at 55%. What we're shooting for is about 55% of our students will meeting or exceed expectations in ELA, and also looking at benchmark. 3 times a year we give students a reading benchmark and looking at having 70% or higher meet grade level expectations. This past year we've gone to a more updated version of the benchmarks, and we've seen I think more realignment in regards to MCAS. So we've seen some great results on that. When we looked at them in the past, we had MCAS scores one way, and then we had benchmark scores in but we're seeing, I think, a little bit more alignment. On the next couple slides, you'll see our current MCAS results for ELA. If you notice, we are, in grades 3 and 4, South Elementary is below the state average and district average, meeting expectations or exceeding expectations. In grades 3 and 5, we have shown some improvement over 2017. On the next few slides, one of the things that I want to kind of point out is, and this is something that we're really focusing on, how do we kind of decrease this gap, both for our students with disabilities and non-disabled students. You'll see that there is quite a split between the students that are meeting or exceeding expectations, both in basically across the board, grades 3, 4, and 5. About a 22% difference in grades 3, 39% difference in grade 4, and in grade 5, about a 52% difference. This is something I will address in a few minutes, and how we're looking at how do we decrease that gap. The next piece gets into attendance, and you'll see that one of our strategic objectives is really decreasing absenteeism throughout the building. This past year, we had about 4%, about 24 students with 18 or more absences, 20% with 10 or more. And then we had tardies about 7%, 65. You'll notice that the percentage doesn't look quite right in those, but we also had an increase in enrollment last year with taking the 5th grade back, so that's why the percentage is different. So some of the things, and I'll address this one first, because this is one of our objectives that we have over the next couple of years that's kind of tied to achievement, is really how are we going to look at decreasing some of these chronic absenteeism. We are looking at sending out more letters and making more contact with parents as we identify it. So today, over the past week, anyone with 5 or more absences this year has already received a letter and are looking at getting phone calls. Most of what we're seeing right now is really vacations is what we're seeing. We're also going to be looking at posting daily attendance in our lobby, what our percentage rate is. And last year, we started awarding classrooms with gold and silver paws, depending on their percentage. So any class that had 96% or higher attendance that week got a silver paw posted outside their door, and each class the classes with the highest percentage got a gold paw. So that was something that we were looking at doing, and we'll be continuing to do that as well. Looking at our goal, looking more at the achievement piece, we have 3 objectives. One was absenteeism, which I kind of just addressed. The first one that we're looking at is an annual focus for professional development. We have some great coaches in this district, both literacy and math. For both of them, and you'll kind of hear this repeated in math just in a moment, but is really looking at a focus, and our focus this year is in regards to comprehension. And that's really one of the things that we're seeing a difficulty with, even when we look specifically at the benchmarks and when we look at MCAS as well. So there'll be a strong focus on comprehension through our coaching and in all of our PD. One of the things that we're going to be doing is looking at student work, really having teachers bring student work from the current units of study that we're doing in reading and writing, and really looking at that and having teachers analyze those and make recommendations for instructional points for students. And then one of the things that we're really working on in the front office is getting us, myself and my assistant principal, in classrooms more, changing some of the procedures that we do in our office to make sure that we are in classrooms a lot more. The second bullet point that we're going to look at for our objective is looking at utilizing understanding by design to address student academic instruction and maintain high standards. And one of the focus that we're really looking at is inclusionary practices. We're also really going to be taking a look at making sure that all students, those students who are on ed plans and not on ed plans, are making sure that they are looking at, they're experiencing the grade level curriculum. So making sure that classroom students are in classrooms experiencing that grade level curriculum. And then also looking at using data more effectively to plan instruction for all students. And that will kind of be also looking at the student work as well. Goal 2 is really mirrored with that ELA goal. It's really looking at increasing students who are meeting or exceeding expectations in math. And we utilize data from the MCAS, both district and school results, and also are looking at the district math assessments that we do 3 times a year as well. So we're using that information. And again, with math, here is just that historical data in regards to South Elementary School compared to the rest of the schools in the district. We are below state average just by a little bit in each grade level. And then when you look at the split for students with disabilities and non-students without disabilities, you see those splits again in math as well, grades 3 through 5. And then again, these are if you look, these are really the same strategic objectives that we will have for math as well. And our annual professional development focus is going to be looking at that workshop model, addressing kids' needs within the classroom, incorporating number talk so kids are more comfortable with their number sense, really how to manipulate numbers and talk about numbers and explain what they did. And then again, looking at that staff meeting time to look at student work. And the second bullet point is utilizing understanding by design. And again, we're looking at a lot more problem-solving activities, inclusionary practices like we did for ELA, and utilizing data for instruction. That'll be the focus for this current year. And now looking at goal 3, Amy's going to talk a little bit about that. Go to use this one.
All right, I'll try to explain this. Adam might have to jump in a little bit. We're going to consistently utilize the Leader in Me. That's something that the school has been using, I understand, for a few years. Adding along with it a second step, which is a different program, to explicitly teach social skills. Positive behavioral intervention system will be revised in the building with the classroom reinforcement systems developed to support common expectations, hoping to decrease behavioral referrals by 10% annually. Ways that we've done this, let's see, next page? Okay, sorry.
I'll talk a little, the data that's up there is, last year what we started to do is we started looking at, have a positive behavior referral system. So there wasn't just negative behavioral referrals, there were positive office referrals as well, where we looked at the students who were doing the right thing and making sure that we were calling home for those students as well. And this is something that we've continued into this year. And last year we started around April 25th, right after April vacation, and we had 65 of them. And then if you look at the behavioral referrals, last year our numbers were higher. And I think one of that was we were much more, I think, accurate with some of our recording than we have been, I think, in the past. So that number did go up as well.
Strategic objectives, using consistent language and expectations across the building. That's explicitly teaching the 7 habits and 1 second step lesson per week. Developing routines and supports in the classroom, which includes having a 20-minute morning meeting in the classroom to discuss expected behaviors. Tier 1 support in each classroom, school-wide morning meeting. That happens once a week on Wednesdays. And then develop school-wide supports for all students, including flowcharts to provide guidance, immediate logical consequences mentoring program, where a student may have a mentor somewhere else in the building that they check in with, whether it's, I think, maybe once a week or sometimes daily, depending on the student's needs. And then, as Adam already mentioned, the positive referral program. Do you want this?
I'm good for this, thanks. So goal number 4 is to create more curriculum-focused opportunities for families to engage with their child's learning experience at home and at school. So some of our strategic objectives and initiatives are to hold an annual family cleanup day, which we've done this in the past, and it's where we've invited families to come to the school for a few hours on the weekend and work on cleaning up the exterior of the school grounds. And also for the past few years, we've conducted a summer open house to allow students and families to come check out the building before the school year begins. This event also includes an ice cream social where the kids get ice cream in these little plastic South Elementary cups, and the kids love it. They collect them. It's a big deal. And this is a great way to kick off the school year. And we've also talked about creating documents in parent-friendly language to outline both academic and behavioral expectations at South. This will include highlighting special events and expected projects throughout the year. And based off of a school-wide parent survey, the parents have expressed an interest in having a grade-level student-parent night, reviewing the concepts and the curriculum to give parents insight on how to best support their child with math and reading while they're at home doing their homework. And then finally, we've also talked about technology is growing at rapid rates, and we would like to hold at least one parent workshop on technology, which would include discussing the dangers of technology, parental controls, and how it's impacting their behavior and their learning.
Those are our 4 goals that we have for this coming year and the focus that we'll have. When you look at the school improvement plan, you'll see that there's many more action steps in there than we talked about this evening, but those would be our focus for the next year. And so if anybody had any questions, we want to.
Questions? I have one for you. Your math, grade 3, you know, you're 42 and 45%, you want to get over 55%. That's a pretty bold undertaking to bump it up that much. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about how you're going to pull that off, because I think other schools would like to be able to do that.
Yeah. I think if we look at Hedge, I think they had a great, one of the things that I know we've been talking to them, and one of the things that they've been talking about is really looking at that inclusion for students and making sure that students are really experiencing that grade level of curriculum. It is over 3 years, so it's not, it would be over 3 years. But at the same time, I think that's one of our major focuses that we've really looked at in the past year, is making sure that all students are getting that additional grade level curriculum. And then if there's additional supports that are needed based upon their IEPs, that we provide those as well. So we want to make sure that they're getting both the curriculum too.
No other questions?
Great, thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna grab that clicker.
I don't know, I think mine is about.
And now we have a presentation from Dr. Campbell on MCAS results.
Yes,
Dr.
thank
Campbell.
you. Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. I'm great, it's up. Thank you very much. So this evening, I'll be presenting not only on our MCAS results, but the new accountability measures and some of the things that actually they were referenced in Dr. Blaisdell's presentation, but how we're moving forward as a district and as individual schools to address some of these accountability measures and our MCAS results. So essentially what we'll go through first are our 2018 results, some of our historical data so you can see where we compare to years past. Granted, keep in mind this is a new assessment. We've got the legacy MCAS that still exists, and I'll talk about that. And then we have the next generation MCAS, so we're in this transition period, as are other districts in the state. I'll talk about those new accountability indicators and the data associated with that. ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and the accountability measures that the federal government has mandated and how the Massachusetts has aligned to those mandates. And then again, as I said, we'll talk about our district's response and approach to that. So in some cases, when I'm talking about legacy MCAS, you'll remember we had advanced, proficient, needs improvement, and warning, and those ratings still exist. That's not the case with the next generation MCAS. It goes from exceeding expectations, meeting, partially meeting, and not meeting. So I'll be talking about two different ratings along the way, but that's why, because we have two different systems that really exist right now. Okay? And I think this works. All right. So what you're looking at here, this is the state's result. So when you hear Dr. Blaisdell talking about a proficiency rating of 55%, meeting that. If you recall, when MCAS first came out back in the early 90s, we had a number of, the majority of students, particularly in grades 3 to 8 and at the high school, were achieving at a 50 to 60% proficiency rating. It was a new assessment. Standards had just been introduced relatively soon before that. So you see that the proficiency as measured at the state level was lower. And we, slowly and surely, as a state, we rose to those expectations and those went up. When you look at our state results, this is from 2018, our state from grades 3 to 8 in English language arts range from 46 to 54%, meeting or exceeding those expectations. So you see the blue and the green portions of those bar graphs, and those are the grade levels. So it goes from grades 3 to grade 8. So that's what you're looking at right there. Okay? So that's where we range. Grade 7 across the state demonstrates the lowest proficiency. So you'll see that. And that is not something that's new. It's not, really doesn't come as a surprise. I think when you, I always equate it, when you walk the halls of a middle school, you see students who are about this tall, and then some students that are 6 feet tall and they're shaving, so physically they're all evolving at different points, but developmentally they are too, and cognitively, and I know Dr. Sorensen knows a lot about that. So I think that we see in grade 7, we tend to see that phenomenon. So it's certainly, it's not unique to us as a state, and it's certainly not unique to us as a school department. Okay. Here you are, we're looking at the English language arts for the district. Plymouth had between 48 and 56% meeting or exceeding expectations in grades 3 to 8. And again, our grade 7 demonstrated the lowest proficiency among those grades. And the average, but if you look over at the chart, the table on the right side, this shows our change from 2017 results to 2018, and the average scale scores. Okay, so they take the raw score, all the pluses and minuses that they do, and they get a scale score, and then there's a range of scaled scores that give you a rating. Those proficient, the meeting expectations, exceeding, et cetera. Overall, the average scale scores went up even slightly, although it's very minimal in grade 7. So I'm going to go back to the state. They all went up with the exception of grade 7. For the state, we actually went up across the board in ELA from one year to the next in terms of scaled scores, okay? And again, this is real high-level data. We're not looking at the nitty-gritty. We're not looking at individual students. We're looking at the aggregate here. When you look at our math performance, slightly less well across the state, 46 to 50% of students meeting or exceeding expectations in grades 3 through 8. Again, grade 7 is demonstrating the lowest proficiency in comparison to other grade levels across the Commonwealth. And the average scale scores were lower across the state, with the exception of grade 3. Actually went up slightly, although minimal. Here now you're looking at Plymouth's scores in mathematics in 2018. Plymouth had between 39 and 53% meeting or exceeding expectations. Again, grade 7 demonstrated the lowest proficiency, as did the state. And our average scores were lower consistently, and not in grade 3. We didn't go up in grade 3, but our grade 8, actually, the scaled scores went up in our grade 8. Okay. Okay. So now what you're looking, so we're shifting, so that's what you just looked at, what I just presented to you is grades 3 to 8, the new next generation MCAS. This is the legacy MCAS. So this is what we've been doing for years on end. Grade 10 specifically is the line graph that you see on the left, and on the right you see grade 5 and 8 science and technology engineering. Okay. This is the left side. The 10th grade is showing the percent of proficient or higher from 2007 to 2018. So you can see over time that progression, that slow progression upward, where we went from, low 70s or low 50s, depending on the assessment, to the 70s to even 90% in English language arts in terms of, as a Commonwealth, our proficient to advanced scores were in an upward trajectory. Grade 5 and 8 science, technology, engineering have been flat for years across the state. Now, the difference, what's important to note here is the grade 10 assessment is subject specific. So when you take your, specifically in science, I should say, excuse me. So when you take your MCAS in science MCAS in grade 10, we take bio. So the students are taking an end of course assessment, okay? As opposed to grade 5 and 8, which is cumulative. So a grade 5 exam is going to have standards from grades 3, grades 4, and grades 5. So it's a very different assessment. So that's why you see the difference there. It's not an end of course. It's not a grade 5 exam. It's not a grade 8 exam. It's looking at standards over multiple years. So that's just the approach that's been done there, and it's different than what's been done in grade 10 science. So there lies the difference in that case. This is the district's results. Again, you see on the left the trajectory of ELA math and science from 2007 up to last year's scores. What's important to note is we've shifted, Mrs. Reardon has presented here before about the next generation science standards, and we've embraced that as a district. We embraced it early on, and we embraced that knowing that there's a transition at the state level with the assessment of science, okay? So right now, we're in this flux where there are some questions that are next generation science, some of them go back to the old standards. We've moved forward with the new next generation science standards. So in that case, until everything is next generation, you may see a slight decline. We felt it was important to move forward with the curriculum to get in there early and often to realign that, knowing that we're going to have this transition period with the science. So in terms of our accountability, MCAS is just one piece of that. It's really important because it really it speaks to the curriculum. It's all based on standards, so we're not really the MCAS itself is based on our curriculum because our curriculum is based on the standards. The accountability measures get into a number of factors beyond that, and this is what I want to take some time to talk about right now. So the Every Student Succeeds Act requires much more than achievement. It's also looking at academic growth. So if you have students that are proficient from year to year, that's not enough. We need to look at students. So let's say I get a 250 in terms of my scaled score of proficiency. Well, the next year, we want to look at all the students who got a 250 or there, around, and how are they doing in comparison to one another the following year? What kind of growth are they showing on their trajectory? So we're looking at academic achievement for all students. So even a student who was, say, in the low needs improvement or the low, not meeting expectations, how much growth? They may still be in that lower end, but are they showing substantial growth in comparison to the students that they were, related to academically or performance-wise in that last year? Because that shows, that's really important too. So if you have students who are really struggling academically, but they show an 80% growth percentile, well, that's a big deal because they've really changed their cohort. They're moving at a faster rate than the cohort of students that they were compared to in the past. Another thing that is required for accountability is high school graduation rate. We're looking at not only do they graduate, but do they graduate within 4 years, or do they persist and graduate within 5 years? That's another piece that we're looking at. And we're also looking at the English language proficiency of students, and ESSA is also asking that all states look at least one measure of school quality or student success beyond the ones that I just mentioned. And I'm going to get into how that translates at Massachusetts now. Okay. I know this is hard to read up there, and it's hard for me to read here, so I'm going to put my glasses on. So Massachusetts, the way that they translated that is we're looking at academic achievement. We're looking at in ELA, math, and science. So we're always looking at that, and we're being rated on that. We're also looking at student growth and student growth percentile. So when you think, it's not percentage, when you think of like height and weight charts, when we go to the doctors and you're 50th percentile, well, you're solidly right there average, right? So growth percentile is looking at how you compare to students, as I said, within the cohort of growth in comparison to years past, okay? So we're looking at student growth in ELA and math. The reason they don't do it in science is because it doesn't happen every year, where ELA and math does, okay? English language proficiency, I mentioned that. That's progress made by students towards attaining English language proficiency, okay? And then the additional indicators, again, this is non-high school, so our elementary and our middle school students, chronic absenteeism. And chronic absenteeism is defined as the percentage of students missing 10% or more of their days in membership, okay? And it doesn't matter for what reason, 10 days or more of being considered absent, okay? Now at the high school, there are other indicators that are involved. So it goes beyond the things that I mentioned. So they have the achievement indicators, as I've already mentioned. They have the student growth in ELA and math, but they also have high school completion because they're high schools. Their 4-year rate, the extended engagement rate that I talked about, that 5-year cohort graduation rate, and they also have the annual dropout rate. So they're looking at our annual dropout rate every year, and they want to see that we're decreasing that as a district. And what are we doing, or as a school, individual school? So what are we doing about that? Also, the English language proficiency, which I mentioned before, which is new. And then the additional indicators at the high school level is, again, chronic absenteeism, but they're also looking at, this is something that's new, they're looking at advanced coursework, and specifically the percentage of 11th and 12th grade students that are completing advanced coursework. And that doesn't mean just AP. It means AP. It could be if you have an IB program in your school district, dual enrollment classes, and there are other state-approved, what they consider rigorous courses, which we have in our district. But they want to see that we're challenging all kids, and how do we increase the rigor and increase membership and completion, not just signing up, but successful completion of those courses. So in addition to MCAS, you know, ELA, math and science, these are all the indicators that we're now being assessed on and given our accountability measures, okay? And these things are weighted in different ways, and I want to go through this briefly. So student achievement is at the top of that, so it's really a 3-to-1 split. All right, so if you're a non-high school, 60% of, if you're a non-high school and you have students that are English language learners, 60% of that will be based on achievement, 20 on growth, and then the other 10% and 10% is by English language proficiency and absenteeism, that chronic absenteeism. If you don't have English language learners in your school, well, that percentage, that 10% is split evenly between student achievement and student growth, okay? So these are the things that are weighted in terms of our accountability measure at the non-high school level, our elementary schools and our middle schools. At the high schools and the middle highs, so if you have a 8 to 12 school or a high school, this is how it's broken down. So achievement for a school that has English language learners, 40% achievement, 20 student growth, 20% is looking at high school completion, which includes dropout rates, English language proficiency, 10%, and then the other indicator is chronic absenteeism, and advanced coursework is the last 10%. Again, if you do not have students that are English language learners, that 10% is split up across the achievement and the student growth, just like they were in the other slide that I showed you. So these are takeaways. What you're looking at here, this is direct takeaways from the Department of Education. So they're looking, this is the first year of this accountability system, and DESE's going to be looking to see if there are any changes or refinements to be made. They understand it's a work in progress, and there may be some revisions, and we'll certainly communicate that to you. They're not naming any new underperforming or chronically underperforming schools this year with the new accountability measures. There are 4 schools that have been released for underperforming status at the new commissioner's discretion, and 68% of the Massachusetts schools were shown to be improving or better under this new system. And then there are, the Department of Education in recent weeks recognized 52 schools of recognition, and this was either for academic achievement or academic progress and growth. Happy to say that Cold Spring was on that list for academic growth. So they've shown considerable growth from prior years. So really proud of them and the work that was put in there. So I just wanted to recognize that for a moment. So just this is just a breakdown overall of the accountability data. So when you look at where our schools as a state fall, they fall into 3 categories: either not requiring assistance or intervention, requiring it, or insufficient data. Okay, 90% of schools do not require any assistance or intervention. 7% are requiring assistance or intervention. This could be at the district level, not the state level, but at the district level, saying that you need to do something here. And then 3% have designated as insufficient data. All but one of our our elementary, middle, and high schools do not require assistance intervention. Federal Furnace was recognized as requiring some intervention, the district. And there is insufficient data, obviously, for the Early Childhood Center because they do not fall into these categories, but they're on the list. Okay. This is just, I'm not going to belabor these next 4 slides, but I just want to point them out because this is on the Department of Education. So the accountability reports, all the information that I shared can be seen on DESE's website, both at the district level and at the individual school level. So this is just the top of one of those reports, and you'll see, this isn't ours, this is just an example, the percentage of accountability targets that an individual school met, and where they fall within the percentile of schools in those targets, okay? So this is just an example of what that would look like. This is an example of all of the indicators that I mentioned, the achievement, the growth, the high school completion, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you're looking at this, you see a bunch of zeros and 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. There's an algorithm that they use to come up with the percentage of possible points to see where you fall in terms of accountability, okay? So if you have every school and every district has a target. So based on your performance in prior years, you have a target for each of these indicators. So whether it's your academic achievement in ELA Math Science, your growth, your course completions, your graduation rates, whatever it is, everything has a target. So Dr. Blaisdell, when he's talking about South Elementary, he knows his targets, okay? You can either meet your target, exceed your target, make progress towards your target, but not quite meet it, or decline, okay? A decline, so if you look at this chart, and it's really hard to see, I apologize for that, but a 0 would be there if there was a decline. So I can see at this example that was given by the state that math achievement for all students at, I believe that's the non-high school level, or maybe it says high school, I can't see it, but thank you. That math achievement in this particular case declined in this district, okay, in this example. All right, so this is like surface level information that you can look at, but while you can see that science achievement exceeded its target because there's a 4 there, okay? So a 0 is going to be a decline, as I said. A 1 is no change. So this was your target. You're exactly where you were last year in terms of performance. 2 would be a slight improvement. 3 would be meeting. 4 would exceed, okay? So they take all of this. It's broken down by those percentages that I told you, and you get a score. The most important thing to me, and the message that I share with our principals, our coordinators, and directors is not how many points you're getting for each indicator, but trying to make progress on every single indicator that we have. So we want high achievement. We want students to be in rigorous coursework. We want kids to come to school. We want them to graduate. So we need to work on all of this and try to do it as best we can, and hopefully, you know, the points fall where they may, and it's positive. Okay. So this is in terms of Plymouth's overall results, and I know you can't see this again. It's on the Department of Ed's website. But overall, just to give you a sort of synopsis of this, our non-high school ELA and science demonstrated the greatest achievement in terms of their targeted performance. Okay, so their target, where the high school's target in the same contact area remains about the same. Okay, so our non-high school ELA and science received the greatest growth towards that target, where it was about consistent to last year at the high school. Math achievement remains about the same in terms of overall looking at the district non-high school, and it went down slightly at the high school level. We're really looking at the math expectations is a big shift, and we're working really hard on that, and I know you'll hear more about that from the math coordinator, but it's a really big shift in terms of expectations for math performance at the high school level. So we're working on that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the things that we're doing. Growth targets were met for both English language arts and mathematics at the non-high school level, while some growth in ELA was made at the high school, and performance remained static in terms of growth. It was pretty static in mathematics at the high school. Chronic absenteeism, while it didn't improve at the non-high school, at the elementary and middle level, it didn't decline. Where at the high school, we actually exceeded the targets for the year in this. So we saw a positive shift there. Okay. In advanced coursework completions, targets were met at the high school as well, at the high school level. So we know we have some work to do, particularly around mathematics in some cases. We know that we have to continue to try to close the gap for some of the subgroups that were mentioned, and happy to talk about some of those things. And chronic absenteeism, regardless of what our targets are, we need to try to get kids to come to school and stress the importance of that and to support our families when those challenges exist. Okay. These are just some recommendations actually from the Department of Education, which I just wanted to share. They're stressing to districts and stressing to anyone who's looking at this information, do not compare 2018 accountability data to your historical accountability results. Okay, they're saying don't compare it. It's a different system. Don't compare it, and don't equate your accountability categories with the historical results. There's no crosswalk, so they're not saying that you can't take your performance indicators from the past and line them up. It's not apples to apples. So we're in this transition. Everything is, the bar has been raised and things are a challenge, but you need something to look at in comparison. So that's why I show you that historical data for some of that as well. So what's our district's response? We're starting to look, again, it hasn't been released to the public for quite some time now, not too long. The MCAS results were mailed home not too long ago, so families received their individual students' scores. And again, if there's any questions that families have, they could absolutely call me, call the building principal or an academic coordinator. We'll be happy to walk them through that. We're looking at the data. We've met with all of our buildings to date, the MCAS data to review not only their MCAS data, but their accountability reports, principals, assistant principals, coordinators, department heads, and special education to look at that data, English language arts, math, science, come up with specific suggestions, come up with follow-ups for the buildings and how to support them at the district level. And one thing that we've recently done too is we're in the process of revising our school improvement plan process in the format, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. Dr. Myesis and I met, about 3-4 weeks ago to have a conversation about this. Really felt that it was time to change this a little bit. The Department of Ed does not mandate, but they do endorse a particular model, and we're moving in that direction with the model that they've endorsed in recent years. Okay, and I want to talk about the components, and I did, as an attachment, give you a sample that I actually just put together as a point of reference for you. So that's just it's made up, the ones that I put in as an attachment. But essentially, what we're looking at now is a multi-year plan. So moving forward, in South Elementary, Dr. Blaisdell was kind enough to sort of transition. He's transitioning because, doing a school improvement plan in October and expecting to transition to a new multi-year plan that has a different format is unreasonable. So we're transitioning. So you will see those moving forward, but Dr. Blaisdell and his team were good enough to create that framework. The annual action plan, they've identified the goals within that, but moving forward, you'll see two distinct reports coming before this board, okay? So the first, as I said, it's the multi-year school improvement plan structure. So that's going to have mission, vision, what are your core values, and then what we call data analysis, which is grounded in student achievement. You're looking at gaps, you're looking at information. It's critical that we know that we ask the right questions. It's critical that we do a thorough needs assessment at the building level when you're developing a school improvement plan. You really need to know where your students are at, what your school community is looking for. So academically, looking at that data. And then this thing called a theory of action. So basically an if-then statement. So if a coordinated system is put in place, as an example, to monitor student progress, then academic achievement will rise. Okay, so you're going to see statements like this in school improvement plans that are then followed up with strategic objectives and strategic initiatives, which you heard that language this evening from Dr. Blaisdell and his team. So again, we're moving forward with a 3-year focus for strategic objectives that have professional development needs identified within them, and also looking at how does this affect teacher induction, mentoring activities to support the implementation of those things. And then what are your outcomes? What are your interim outcomes? What are your final outcomes for evaluating that? Okay. And then in addition to that, so we're envisioning this framework where you have a 3-year plan. It's based on your MCAS. It's based on all your accountability measures and our district's strategic plan, of course. But you also have an annual action plan, because you got to break that up year by year. So not only will there be a multi-year plan, but every year as a school, you're going to look at that plan and you're going to say, all right, we have an objective regarding absenteeism. We have a strategic objective around academic rigor or expectations. We have one around our math, for example, and maybe we have one around special education. Now I'm going to break that up and I'm going to create an action plan for each and every one of those. Okay, so that's what that annual action plan, what you'll see in years 2 and 3 will be that annual action plan coming before you. So they'll summarize that they have this strategic framework, and here's the annual action plan. And that will be the specific activities, the specific benchmarks, the timelines, much like our strategic plan has. You'll see that coming forward. And then the resources that they need moving forward. So I did, I believe I'm not going to go through it, but in your attachments, there was a sample framework for a multi-year plan and a sample annual action plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that new process too. I already said this. It's really important, I think, that we know what questions to ask and we know where to find that information. So we've done exercises with administrators on that, knowing the right questions to ask and how do you find that information, because data can be very cumbersome. I just showed you a bunch of charts and tables, and there's a lot more than that. The department has a lot of information on us and our performance, so it's really important that we know what we're looking at and can analyze it critically and with confidence. So you have to spend the time up front really doing that before you can come up with solid objectives and strategic initiatives. You really need to put the work there. So we're doing a lot of that. Okay, and then the good questions will lead you to the proper data points. Okay. There's a lot. Sorry to talk so quickly, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Selly.
Yeah, what's the sort of, I guess, forecast for how long we'll be using the legacy, the previous MCAS scores to kind of quantify the MCAS 2.0 results?
Yeah, well, they're going to be shifting. Science in grade 5 and 8 may be a while. I think you'll see that shifting with grade 10 before you'll see it at the grade
So we're looking
science.
at a few years? Is this something that we're going to consistently go back to each year?
How do you
Because
say?
the longevity of the legacy, those statistics, like when is it just going to be the MCAS 2.0 for
I'd say in a couple of years you would see us just talking about the new measures.
And then the breakdown, the annual action plan. So
Yes.
by year 3, we'll have the assessment from those annual plans sort of lumped together and then
Right.
quantified with proof and evidence of that success.
Right.
of
So that first
improvement.
year you're going to have a multi-year plan, and then each school, as South Elementary said, these are the 4 or 5 objectives we're going to work on, and then you have an action plan for year 1. So in year 1, we're going to have this is our action plan, and then when they come before you the next year, they're going to have
Met
a
and
second
exceeded.
action plan.
Okay, but are they
with-
going to have a meeting exceeded, progressing toward those previous goals from year 1? So are we going to be consistently updated, or is it just at the
No,
end
you would
of
be
that
no,
year
you would be.
3?
That's why the annual piece would be there. You're going to be consistently updated on an annual basis. I mean, the MCAS, you get the accountability is updated by the Department of Education annually, and so aligning our school improvement plans to do the same
makes sense.
It just seems like a lot of data for a 3-year fulfillment. So for us as a board, collectively, for 13 schools, we want to be, we want to see it annually, but we want to be able to quantify that success rate to
Right.
that school improvement plan
Correct.
each time. So they'll be coming for us and updating us on that data from the year before, showing that progression.
Yes, so
and
if
then
you,
moving into the next
exactly,
goal.
so if you have a specific objective that you're trying to meet, you're gonna get, when they come forward the next year, you're gonna get specific feedback on how that went. Is that what
So
you're
I
saying?
think that, I think that sort of can parlay into what you had asked with his statistics with that 55%
Yes,
math number, where he said, that's a big goal to attain, but with a 3-year time frame in mind, maybe not, right? Because we've got, instead of that
Right.
1 year, he's got that 3-year.
right. We have an annual, the Department of Education is going to put an annual target on all of those things for us. So
It's
we have,
recommended.
so we have to, so those 0s to 4s that I showed you up there,
Yep.
every one of those was based on a target. So they're gonna say, your rating was here, and you need to get it up by 5 or 10%. Based on your current performance, we wanna see it jump by so many percentage points. So they're gonna tell you, this is your target. You can choose to we can try to exceed that target. We always want to try to exceed that target, but we have a minimum target to meet, whether it's academic achievement, growth, course completion, graduation rates, dropout rates, absenteeism, all of that. The department has put a target for each of those indicators for each individual school on an annual basis. So they need to look at that and understand that. So you will hear about that. We need to monitor that, and we need to, try to exceed those targets.
So we clearly have a target on our back.
Yeah, it's a nice head, yeah, yes, we do.
Really?
This is exactly what we discussed last year around this time when we were looking at my goals and relative to the report we got from the Department of Education about when we start looking at achievement, we have to be a lot more specific. So I think this model really helps us to really help the schools to really focus in on what those target areas are going to be. So I think, it's a great amount of work, I think, but it's focused work. So I think that's one of the things that is going to really help the schools focus in on those areas that need the most improvement. And there's other areas that they can definitely celebrate the accomplishment. So you can see a lot of our schools have made great strides in a lot of different areas. And I think that's one thing that we can be proud of, is the growth that's happening. But again, it's a roadmap of how we, as a school district, assign resources, but also how do we reflect on some of the progress points that other schools are making in the district, and how do we learn from their successes and how to apply some of those, positive interventions into our structure, which is a great way of looking at things.
Ms. Hunt?
I feel like I might need to wash my mouth out with soap after saying this word, but do we still require DDMs? And, no?
No, that kind of
It
went
went
away.
away.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm
That's
kind
not a
of
mandate
embarrassed that I
anymore.
had to ask that question.
No, that's all right. There's been so many
No,
changes
the
and.
MASC has been fighting against it and.
yeah,
all these-
I wouldn't. That was a big fight that went away.
Okay, good.
And there's a lot of lobbying for it to go away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can see by Dr. Campbell's presentation that there are a lot of benchmark.
Well, that's why I asked. I'm like,
well,
enough
yeah.
is enough, kind
Yeah,
of. thing.
actually, what you just presented is a great improvement.
Right.
Because of the accountability measures.
Sure.
We for years, we've been focused on test scores. Now we're going to focus on accountability measures as well. And I think that's a great step
Yeah, it
forward.
goes beyond test scores.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Dr. Sorensen, I have to tell you that there are some accountability measures that are identified on Dr. Campbell's report that families can really help us with. You talk about attendance. You talk about, Dr. Blaisdell talked about, 5, 6, 7, 8 days attendance, absenteeism, the beginning of school.
That's right, vacations.
That is something that our parents need to understand, that there's accountability at a district level, at a school level, that we have to be aware of. So, help us out here a little bit. It's a
Yeah.
partnership.
Good.
And then, what are you hearing about them adding, I know they've been talking a lot about adding social studies back in. Do you see that happening in the next couple of
assessment?
years?
At assessment level?
Part of the MCAS?
No, I think it's gonna be a while.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
I know
while.
they've been talking about it, and they've been
Yeah,
working
I don't
on
think
it.
the
And
funding is gonna be
civics.
there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. The civics, right, you'll see in terms of the integration of civics as an expectation through some of the work that we already do.
Well, civics, from what I understand, is gonna start being incorporated into every subject, not just social. It's gonna be across the board, right? Isn't that what they've been talking about?
There's a civics component that can be integrated across different
Yeah.
courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Other questions, comments? Okay, yes.
I just was
Mr.
going to say,
Silva.
so this is my son, my third grader. He's fourth grade this year. I got his results, and of course, I texted Patty. Okay, what does this mean, right? I will say though, from a first timer's perspective, it was simple to see. It was easy to look at, but I hope people are watching this because if they're kind of paying attention to their students' grades and where they're progressing, this information is very clear, and it's helpful. So, like I said, just from my own personal perspective, and with absenteeism, I will just say one thing. It's really expensive to go on vacations during February.
other reasons.
Okay, the plane tickets are very pricey. So I think a lot of families tend to split that time up and get creative.
You're absolutely right.
And I only say that because I have young kids. I had to go to Florida last year at, non-holiday time. It was more affordable, but I do get that because I think at the elementary level, the kids, it may not seem as important maybe. You can miss a few days here and there, but that kind of makes me rethink that special vacation we're going to take. But I do appreciate it. And like I said, I think the scores that I saw from my oldest, who's now in fourth grade, based on what it was last year, it was very simple to look at, the colored graphs and sort of, where his placement was. It made easier for me to understand his progression. So, thank you. And the accountability is important as opposed to focusing so much on just testing.
test, right.
I think it takes some of the pressure off. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I know one of the things that we've talked about in certain school council meetings too with the vacation thing, and I think it's important to put it out there for the parents, is not only is it harmful or detrimental for the child to be out, but all the other kids in the classroom suffer as well because this teacher has to spend more time getting that absent child up to speed. So I know that in certain school councils, going back 10, 15 years for me, that's always been the conversation. Yes, parents think it's okay, but they don't realize that it doesn't just affect their child. It affects all children in the class.
Okay, great presentation, a lot of information.
Yeah, that's great.
Now we have a new one.
The next item on our agenda is PYDC.
Yes, tonight we have Kelly Macumber and Muriel Paul. Kelly's actually the director of PYDC. We actually had the opportunity of gaining a grant that was able to allow us to hire her, and Muriel is here in support. She does a lot of work with our group, PYDC, works out of the Brockton office. And we are just very, very happy with our development with PYDC over the years. But I think since Kelly came on, she's actually put us on a good trajectory for organization and management of our operation. And that's exactly what we really wanted when we were going after this grant, to actually have a better span of coverage across the community of Plymouth. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Kelly, and she can kind of give an overview of what we're doing and how she's operating in her capacity as director. So.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for having me tonight. I am Kelly Macumber, and I obviously work for Plymouth Public Schools now, but I figured I'd just introduce myself a little bit and let you guys know my background. If at any point during the presentation you have a question or something comes up, feel free to ask. But I'll try to go through who I am, an overview of PYDC. I'm sure you know a lot. I know Ms. Burgess gives updates on PYDC, but just go through the ins and out a little bit and then turn over to some projects that we have completed and some upcoming projects. And then some time for questions and comments and anything that you might want to see happen through PYDC. So again, I am Kelly. I'm originally from South Shore, Mass. So I'm from Rainham, Mass. I graduated from BR, so Bridgewater Rainham Regional High School. Go Trojans. And then I went on to go to Stonehill College and was a criminal justice and psychology major. So didn't traditionally have an education background, but applied for and got accepted to Teach for America and was sent to Mississippi to train in a classroom to teach English, 6th grade English ultimately, and then went to Charleston, South Carolina full time and taught for Charleston County School District. So I was in a classroom in South Carolina in a Title I school and saw a lot of the struggles that were going on. Always had a passion for human services and social work, but also loved being with youth in a classroom and ultimately got the opportunity to do both. So I moved back to Massachusetts and got a job with High Point Treatment Center in Brockton. So I was able, through their prevention services department, able to kind of combine my love for teaching with my love for social services and work as a person that mostly worked within the schools, so really giving education and information to young people. But our grants at the time went through High Point rather than through a school district. So when this position became available to apply for, I thought it was really unique in the way that the grant we got went through the school district rather than through the treatment center. So that's just a little bit of a background on me. My passion is working with young people, but I also love the community aspect part of it, so I love doing both. And then Marielle is behind me. So Marielle works for High Point Treatment Center and has a grant that is focused on underage drinking. So with our DFC grant combined with the SAPC grant that Marielle's Prevention Services Department holds, we're able to do a lot of work around substances with young people. So let's see if, oh, probably should have had that one up already, but we'll keep on going. So just as an overview of how DFC works, so the grant that funds my position and ultimately my job as a coordinator runs off a 12-sector model. So if you think of any issue or problem that hits a community, you normally can look at the 12 sectors to have a part or to play a role in really not so much fixing that problem, but really playing a role in making that problem better. And ultimately, I guess the goal would be to fix the problem. So when we look at the different sectors, there are young people and there are parents. There's a school district, law enforcement, faith-based communities, the government sectors, healthcare sectors. So there's 12 total, and you guys can read through them at your convenience. But really, at any given point at a PYDC meeting, we have representation from one of these sectors. And really the goal being that with a problem that is as large as young people turning to substances, we need a lot of hands in the pot to kind of make an impact on that issue. So again, PYDC is a community coalition, meaning that we have all of those hands in the pot really represented, but is unique in the way that the school district holds that grant funding. So there's a lot that we can do within the schools working with young people around the issue. When I talk to people in the community, a lot of times there's it's difficult to explain what PYDC does because PYDC does a lot of things, but I guess if I could explain what it does do, it is prevention focused and it is also youth focused. So really true blue prevention, meeting young people where they're at and starting young so that we can impact the issue before it gets to be a problem. So it's mostly education and information sharing, but a lot of solution-based projects come with that territory. In addition to that, it's a lot of connection building so that we can turn to people within the community to have a hand in helping the problem be solved. But also, every time we have that conversation in the community, we decrease the stigma around substance use. And we know there's still a lot, even in the midst of an opioid epidemic, there's a lot of negative feelings and stigma towards the subject of addiction. So really providing an opportunity to have a conversation that's welcoming and inviting. What PYDC isn't is we are not a provider or a treatment center. So a lot of times in the community, I feel like there is some confusion on that. So we do not provide services and we aren't treatment, but we have, again, that 12-sector model where we can turn to the providers and turn to treatment and really connect if that's what a person is looking for. We are also not a parent or grief support group. We have lots of great connections in the community, again, to these things. But PYDC ultimately is very prevention and education focused as well as information sharing. So there are lots of projects and initiatives that PYDC works on. So through our DFC grant, we have an action plan and we have goals that we're constantly working towards. But in addition to completing those goals that are set through our action plan and DFC, we also go above and beyond to kind of work with the community and determine what do they want to see happen within Plymouth in regards to substance use. So sometimes that's setting up a resource table at an event that might not seem like a place to set up a resource table. So recently we were at the Waterfront Festival with a table just giving out information, sharing information. Bob Nolet at the Chamber of Commerce has been really awesome, and he got us a table at the Business Expo. And I had so many unique conversations with people about PYDC, but it was in a non-traditional setting. So able to, again, share that information, spread that information. We work with educators doing direct training, but also with young people doing youth training. So that looks really different in a lot of different settings, but we've been able to provide training to a lot of young people. Just to highlight a few on that board, there will be, and I'll give more information at the end, a prescription drug take-back event coming up in Plymouth. So giving people a safe place to return their unused and unwanted prescription medications in a way that there's no questions asked. It doesn't feel stigmatizing. So that will be coming up at the New Testament Church in Plymouth. Last time we hosted it, it was at New Hope Chapel downtown. So we're really trying to get unique in our venues and who we partner with. In addition to that, we've pulled in speakers and we're working on some upcoming kind of speakers, documentary viewings, different unique ways to talk to young people, while at the same time hosting youth focus groups to get the feedback from the kids of what would be powerful to them. So a lot of times taking that young person feedback of what works, you know. Some highlights that I just want to go through quickly. I know that you mentioned civics class before, and so we had a unique opportunity to work with Miss Fitzgerald. So Mr. Morganweck at Plymouth South Middle School came by my office and he said, I have a teacher that wants to talk to you about vaping. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give her a call. So I called her up and she was like, my class really wants to talk to you about vaping. So I came in and I was kind of expecting to address the kids, and I sat and the kids had a whole presentation for me. Mm-hmm. So they were really able to give me the lowdown on what vaping was, how it was impacting their community, and ultimately they set up a 3-tiered plan to have an impact on it. So the first part was that they wanted to create a presentation that was engaging for their peers to present to their 7th and 6th grade classrooms at Plymouth South Middle School. They wanted to talk to Dr. Horowitz-Willis at the Board of Health to have an impact at that level, and then also talk to Dr. Campbell about how they can increase this information within health classes. So they really were specific about how they wanted to attack the problem, and I worked with them from March to June, and they were an outstanding group of young people. I even argue that they made a lot of movement within the Board of Health to kind of address the issue of vaping, because at the time, I mean, I think there's a lot of information out there now in the news and in the media, but there wasn't as much talk about it, you know, in March. It really has blown up since then. So they got a lot of information out there. Another big highlight is through DFC, we're able to train our staff and people within the, coalition. So Dr. Campbell is on the board, Marielle and I are up there, Dr. Horowitz-Willis is up there, and then Captain John Rogers from the police department. So we were able to bring a unique group of people to Atlanta. So we attended I said that kind of Southern, Atlanta. We were able to attend the National Prescription Heroin Conference, so Prescription Drug and Heroin Conference. So that was a really awesome opportunity to not only build connections, but also to increase our understanding of the epidemic. This is a picture from our prescription drug take-back event. So we were able to collect a lot of prescription medications, including oxycodone and opioids that are really detrimental to the well-being of people. So we were able to get some really strong medications off the streets of Plymouth, which is awesome, or the cabinets of Plymouth. Another great highlight is right here in this auditorium. We did Drug Story Theater. So that is a presentation that uses peer-to-peer connections to of people that are in, or young people that are in treatment, to really talk to young people that aren't identifying as using yet, knock on wood that most of them aren't, and giving them that real conversation of, these are my experiences, I'm going to act them out for you, and then at the end we're going to have a talk-back experience. So this auditorium was full of 8th grade students that were able at the end to talk to young people that have identified as in long-term recovery. So really a powerful presentation. This was exciting for me, so I love working with the little ones, the young ones. But we were able to get into the YMCA and work with the Power Scholars program. Really, this conversation, and a lot of times I get asked about youth prevention and what that conversation looks like. And normally, it's a conversation around healthy decision making, right? Not necessarily talking about substances, but talking about how do I make healthy decisions and how do I make decisions that are healthy for my brain and for my body. So that was a really great experience. And then Marielle does have a couple of boards with her, so we brought some Photo Voice projects. So Photo Voice is a form of non-traditional drug education, and it's a project that we were able to complete. So if you just want to hold them, we can. We were able to complete this summer with the Boys and Girls Club. So we had a small group of, or it wasn't too small, it was 12 young people between the ages of rising 6th, rising 7th, and rising 8th graders. So what we did is we gave them broad-based questions around substance use, and then we had those young people who are up on the board there respond to those questions with photography. While we were doing that, we simultaneously audio recorded the sessions, so the kids were aware that they were being recorded, but we just had really open, honest discussions around the pictures. So while, this picture might speak one way to one young person, when it was projected, there was a lot more conversation that came up. So ultimately, what we have is 25 printed Duraboards from Powderhorn, which have been awesome to work with.
Can you read those so that they
Yeah, of course.
understand what the boards are for?
Sure. So on the left, it says the eyes are expressionless, like all of the things they have seen haven't been told. It's kept in their brain, but no one else knows. So to give a little bit of background, that was around a conversation that we had with the young people about how sometimes people are unwilling to talk about their struggles with substance use. And we talked a little bit about adverse childhood experiences and trauma, and how sometimes, those experiences make a young person feel unable to really talk about what's going on, not only in their life, but maybe the life of a loved one that they know. And then this other board here is a drawing of a koi fish and says, I basically transfer my feelings to the paper. So if I'm upset, I'll draw something kind of sketchy. If I'm sad, I'll draw something depressing. If I'm happy, I'll draw something cool. It's basically like venting, but on paper. So the discussion that was being had at the time was around coping skills and healthy coping skills. And if you're not using a substance to cope, what are alternative healthy versus unhealthy coping skills that you can use? And they had a lot of great responses to that and ways that they try to utilize besides using substances to deal and to cope. So those are 2 out of 25. The project is meant to be used as a traveling art gallery to really, one, show off the awesome work that the kids created, but also to start a conversation around substance use or around addiction that might not have been had there not have been someone that stopped to look at those photographs. So we want to use them in the community at any real setting that wants to utilize them. So again, we've done 2 projects in Plymouth. This is the second. The other one was done far before I got here, but there's been a lot of projects on the South Shore that have been done through the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative, which works through High Point Treatment Center in Brockton. So definitely an awesome project. If you want more information about that, I'd be happy to give that later. And then another highlight is a Strike Out the Stigma event that we put on in Plymouth. So the Plymouth Pilgrims are obviously a baseball team, and sometimes we all say, we'll meet the people where they're at, right? Instead of bringing the people to us, we'll go meet them where they're at. And I knew that through the communities, and me and Marielle talked, that Plymouth Pilgrims games were well attended. So we set up a Strike Out the Stigma night where we essentially just invited partners and organizations to set up resource tables and had information as people walked in. Someone from the Brook Retreat that we worked closely with throughout the first pitch. So it was just really a nice event. There was a lot of community members that were present. It did rain that day, so I think that there could have been more people, but it was a good event overall. So those are some highlights that have gone on since January, but some upcoming events that we have or upcoming projects. The prescription drug take-back event, I've mentioned that, is on October 27th, so it's a Saturday, and I can follow up with a flyer if that's okay. In addition, we've been working, Marielle and I have been working really closely with Kevin Avatable at Plymouth Harbor Academy to really expand their wellness program. So really working to get the students at PHA experiences beyond just the traditional health curriculum, bringing in speakers, bringing in just different presentations and presenters. Upcoming soon, we have Emily from the Happy Heart doing some information about mindfulness and meditation, and me and Marielle were there last week talking about the science of addiction in the teenage brain. So really just bringing good information to PHA. Kevin's been great partnering with us. Information sharing, so recently Plymouth Public Schools purchased Interface, which is an awesome service that allows people within the Plymouth community to connect to mental health services. So I explained it the other day in a meeting as almost a travel agent for mental health. So if you are looking to get a mental health appointment booked, oftentimes if you've had any experience with that, barriers are not taking your insurance, not having the right appointment time. So that in-between person through Interface connects to the providers and provides you with a time of your appointment with someone that takes your insurance. So really making that process a little easier. So we're really trying to push more information out about Interface to the local community. Again, under the assumption that someone that struggles with mental health might ultimately turn to a substance to cope with that untreated mental health issue. We are working right now to develop a social media campaign that's going to be focused around marijuana use, so specifically educating on the impact on young people, so our audience being specifically 18 and under. So that will definitely be coming down the pipeline. It's being worked on right now, getting the right information and the right facts behind it to really push out something that's valuable but also based in fact. The Be in the Know Youth Conference is an awesome collaboration between High Point Prevention Services and United Way. So through that funding, we're able to put on an annual youth conference for young people. Last year, it happened at Bridgewater State University, so we're hoping to bring another group again this year. It was an awesome experience and really just talked about being in the know with young people. So understanding the harms and consequences, but also understanding what reasons for use are and how people ultimately turn to substances, and just being prepared and armed with that information. We are doing the CTC survey this year, so communities that care, to survey our 7th, 8th, and 9th through 12th grade students. And then finally, working on an art collaboration project. So we love Photo Voice, but we also know that there are many talented students within Plymouth Public Schools that we want to utilize their talents to, push something out around mental health, substance use, and healthy coping skills. So kind of working on a project at North and South that will really push those messages out there and help us expand the information, but also decrease the stigma. So that on the screen is a shameless plug for our social media. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, then our handle is PYDC Plymouth, and we would love if you could follow us. A lot of our information sharing in 2018 is through the internet. So that is really all I have for you. Just a quick lowdown, and any questions that you have, comments.
Great summary.
Yeah.
Mrs. Burgess.
What?
Well, what?
What, she's
Mrs.
really
Burgess.
said it. I don't even have to do my PYDC report today. Except that you are having that health symposium.
Yes.
Saturday, October 27th at the New Testament Church down on Long Pond Road. But they're going to have Ed Jacobs from the Plymouth County DA's office, who's going to talk about adverse childhood experiences to identify higher risks facing this generation, and Dr. John Doris, who is a chiropractor and nutrition consultant, and he's doing it on food as medicine and how good nutrition can begin to reverse the hold of disease. So that's what it's about. Is that also, no, the drug, that's not where the drug thing is too, isn't it?
So Dr. Jaley was having that health symposium, and we partnered with him to expand it to be the drug take back as well.
Yeah, so the drug take back is
yeah,
there too.
So
It's all the same.
It will all be on the same day from 9 to 2 p.m. at the New Testament Church.
9 to 11.
So there will be a couple of speakers if anyone's interested in attending, in addition to being able to bring back your prescription medications.
Yeah.
Ms. Hunt.
I know on the first slide it said pre-prom
Yeah.
information. I know that we used to do a big event, and you couldn't buy a prom ticket unless you went to this. And I know the last couple of years we did an online thing, and I don't even remember doing one this year.
No, we haven't done one in a while.
And I've actually had a couple of parents ask why and if we're going to bring it back. And I noticed that you wrote something about that, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah. So my experience, prior to this role, I worked with the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative, and they did, around that time, partner with local school districts to, and again, it changes throughout school districts, but some make it mandatory, some don't, but really just using that time as a pivotal time to remind young people, like, hey, this might come up, and around prom time is normally when risky decision-making happens. So sometimes we partner that with a speaker or a presentation, but we've done in other communities mock crashes and different, really whatever the community wants to have unfold there. But I think it is a valuable time to bring information, but it can look different in every district. So whether or not it's mandatory or.
I know I've had 3 kids go through it, and I think the first one I went to one, the second one I did the online, and the third was last year. But it's a captive audience, and there's standing room only in those rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
It
good,
was,
it is a good.
Kelly doesn't know me in my former life, so I always joke that I remember when PYDC started with 3 people.
Yeah, I was there
and,
too.
Yeah, and I think it morphed into different pieces, and I think I'm so impressed with her, as she knows, because I think it started as the kind of get everyone there message, and we did North and South together at Memorial Hall. I'll never forget it. And then the key is the speaker needs to be able to capture that size of an audience. And then I remember we did when Mike spoke at Capel, it was fantastic. But then we went to the online, I thought lost a little bit. Personally, I wasn't happy with that as principal at the time. So I think it might be something neat to work with high school principals on, especially they're both being new, really what lens these kids need, because I think they could use it. And it's a great time that you could even do something during the day and have a parent follow-up. So I think it could kind of morph those worlds together, if I'm making sense, to get to like the next step. Because
students
yeah,
into
because
it
the
too.
online one
But I know we
lost
couldn't
a
buy
lot.
the ticket
Yeah.
unless we had
But the
that
parents did,
certification.
in the beginning, they'd kind of say, I don't want to be there. They'd give us their views
Right,
to me.
it's
And then,
fine,
but walking out, they'd
but
thank us. So
gotta hear it.
it was a great, and I think we're hearing lots of questions from parents, how can we get more of this? So Kelly, if you need help
remember
with
it.
it,
Yeah,
I'd love to
definitely.
get involved again.
You hadn't mentioned that you talked about all the talented kids at North and South, but you didn't mention what they were doing. And you're saying that South you said was doing painting and illustrations, and
Yep.
North's doing video? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So Ms. Kwong at South High School, and again, this will be in the spring, so we're just in the planning stages now. We'll be working with her painting and illustration class, and then kind of a different lens. Ms. Carosa at North High School will be working with her film class. So I think traditionally kids make PSAs, like they're used to that, but I think she might take a different approach rather than PSA, make it a creative opportunity for young people to come up with what they want to create for the project, but that will be coupled with education. So I'll come into her classroom and work with young people so that they understand whatever topic is of interest to them at a deeper level, and then their project will ultimately reflect that learning. So.
And the other thing is that with Healthy Plymouth, it's just how much the kids are doing.
Yeah.
Because you got the VPA involved in Healthy Plymouth,
Yep.
and they're doing coffee houses. So you've had one already this year?
Yeah, so one has passed in October, or recently. But yeah, Healthy Plymouth has been awesome at really, providing that. It's one thing to tell young people to not use substances or to choose not to use them or to encourage them not to. But ultimately, you have to have safe things for them to be doing in lieu of using a substance. So positive outlets and places for them to go. So coffee houses have really provided that, safe, structured space where a parent mentioned the other night, not only are they going to perform at that coffee house, but all the prep time that goes into before they're performing or whatever it is they're doing, the spoken word or the musical piece. So yeah, we are going to work with the coffee houses to do a substance use focus kind of night. And again, it doesn't need to necessarily be a substance use in itself, but again, all of those kind of themes that go along with talking about substance use disorder. So whether that is coping skills or talking about trauma and how it impacts young people, and really having them come up with something that's authentic to them.
Ms. Hunt?
One more thing. I know, when you were talking about civics and advocacy, I love that. But I do know, like with PTA, I've worked on it at the state and national level with the flavored vapes and Juuls. And from my understanding, Massachusetts is getting rid of, I just heard it, I don't know where I read it, like the mango flavors, you're only going to be able to get like the regular and the mint now. From what I understand, you're going to have to go to another state to get all those flavors for Juuls. So that's just like a perfect point of, when we're teaching the kids, we advocate for things and we can make it happen. And
Make a
see
change,
results.
yeah, and-
I'm not sure when, but I heard that pretty soon they're not going to be available in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so recently the Board of Health made some progress on tobacco products in Plymouth, and I'm still working on, reading through the small print of that regulation and understanding it a little better, but I've also heard the same thing coming down the pipeline. In addition to that, the age for purchasing tobacco will increase to
Yes,
21 versus
I heard that too,
18.
yeah.
They also voted that so within Charlie Baker's regulation, there was some small print around the grandfather clause, which would allow young people that were 18 going into December to be grandfathered into still purchasing. But the regulation that Plymouth has agreed to will bypass that grandfather clause, so the young
The
people won't be able to purchase.
National School Board Journal that came out just last week or the week before cited a study of urine analysis of 16-year-olds who were vaping. And they found in the urine of those 16-year-olds 5 cancer-causing toxins that wouldn't have been there if they hadn't been vaping. I think that's a really dramatic finding. It's one of the first ones of its kind, because this is a new area to study. So I think the work you're doing is only going to be more and more demanding as time goes on.
And I do think that given that, it's always going to be whatever the next current trend or like fad is within substance use. So I think it really is about, arming the kids with the skills to make positive decisions that are going to ultimately be healthy for their brain and body, and really sticking to that message of it doesn't matter what's put in front of you, but if it's not going to be something that yields a positive result, why am I going to do it? So working on that like kind of character development and
All right.
positive self-talk.
Thank you so much. A lot of information.
you.
Great presentation. Thanks for answering our questions.
Of course. I also brought you guys folders. I don't know if you want me to.
You can just leave them there.
Leave
We'll
them
pick
right
them up.
here?
Thank you much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break, everybody. So come back here around 20 after.
Are we doing all of these?
Thank you. Back in session here. The next item, which is to review the superintendent's SMART goals, we're going to hold that over to the next meeting because we're kind of running late this evening. So, and Dr. Maestas has agreed to that. So noted. Is there anything to report on fundraisers this evening?
We skipped one item.
Yes.
Dr. Sorensen.
Mask
And that's the
resolutions.
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 Yeah, you know what, 'cause it's not on my agenda.
We moved it up. We moved it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
It's
We
on
can do
our-
we'll do the resolutions because we're going to do 4 of them
yes, we have
tonight.
4 tonight.
I forgot to bring my book.
Dr. Maestas, please start us
Yes,
off.
tonight, well, there are a total of 9 resolutions for the MASC meeting that's upcoming. We will review 4 tonight, we'll review 3, our next school committee meeting. So the first resolution is relative to arming educators in Massachusetts. The MASC resolution is emphatic no to not support arming educators in Massachusetts, and I support this resolution. I have had a number of conversations with our police chief, and we do a lot of work at our safety committee relative to school safety. When this first came up, as a collective group, we discussed this, and the goal of the police department, the goal of the school department is to minimize firearms in schools. This would add another level of concern that the police would have within schools, to have more firearms within schools. I think it is a discussion that has a different impact in different parts of this country, but I think in Massachusetts it is definitely not an option, in my opinion. Okay,
Right.
this is my opinion, and I'm just recommending that I do support the position of MASC on this resolution.
Is there a motion here? Because the committee needs to take a vote on this, either to approve or not approve resolution number 1. Ms. Hunt?
I move that we approve this resolution.
And we approve the resolution number 1, which would be to support MASC's position on firearms and rejecting the notion of providing firearms for teachers. Is there a second to that motion?
Marge just seconded.
Margie, are you the second?
Yes.
Margie's the second. Thank you. Any questions of what we're voting on? Okay, so a yes vote would be to support MASC. So please, it's time to vote. Did you vote, Edna?
Hadn't been refreshed, so I'm going back to it.
Did you hit join the meeting?
I'm trying to go back. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay.
Okay, everybody voted in favor. Thank you very much. Resolution number 2, Dr. Maestas.
Yes, just for information for Ms. Haywood's benefit, the reason why we are taking this vote is because the Massachusetts Associated School Committees has their annual conference or winter conference. And we have a delegate and a backup delegate that represents this board at that meeting. And they will vote as this board has voted tonight. That will be their official vote based on what happens tonight.
Because there might be subsequent, and they can
Yes.
change.
Right, on the first
They might
ballot.
am-
On the
put
first
amendments
ballot,
on
on the
it, but
first
yeah.
one.
And so they have the authorization from this board to represent the committee at that meeting, okay? So tonight's is informing that vote. The second one is rural school districts. I do not have a recommendation on this as a result that we are not a suburban or rural school district, but I did make a comment relative to a lot of the discussion that takes place regarding suburban and rural school districts, and what they are looking for is support because the nature of their geographic size. And a lot of the issues that the rural school districts have for conditions, we have here in Plymouth. So one of the things that I put as a side note is some of the concerns that rural and rural schools have are relative to our size. And later there's a transportation one. That's one of the key areas that we really have a level of concern because we have a geographic, I think our bus routes are as large as most regional school districts, and that's one of the areas that they would like additional support with Chapter 70 for. Years ago, these school districts used to get an additional Chapter 70 credit because they were designated as a regional or a rural school district, and that has gone away. They're looking for that additional support, or actually that support to come back. So I don't really have a recommendation. I would say if you, as a committee, would like to support these school districts, you may want to chime in on this.
Ms. Hunt.
I'm going to just add something because I was part of the resolution committee and we had a lot of discussion on this. And I think that we have voted not, this has come up before, and I believe we voted in the past not to support it. I'm not 100% sure. One of the things that we talked about is, yes, it doesn't include every district, but our neighboring districts do, and what surrounds us eventually could affect us just from, people moving or all that kind of stuff. And also just to note that what they're actually calling for too is, just to start, it looks like they're looking for a working group. They want to start discussions. And I don't believe it's going to actually take anything away from us. It's just going to support right now to support our fellow communities. So that was part of the discussion because we knew that it wasn't going to be for everyone.
Yes.
I don't know.
Can I say something about that? Because it does reference Chapter 70 financial assistance programs to be studied. And then the next sentence, it says, it talks about academic improvements, identify and advise on eligibility for state and federal programs. So what it's doing here is it's throwing money issues and academic performance issues and federal regulation issues into one committee to
That's a
study.
little
And
bit, yeah.
I can't support it because
No, it's too
it's
much.
throwing it all together. It's leaving it too wide open anyway. It's not specific. If it specifically said Chapter 70, maybe then I could vote on it,
I think that's might be why we didn't vote on it in the past. I'm not sure.
perhaps.
Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar.
I personally can't support the creation of a working group to study all those elements and make recommendations on them.
So I'll move that we vote no on Resolution 2.
Okay, we have a motion to not support Resolution 2, seconded by Mr. Morgan. Is there a
Yep.
question? Okay, everybody ready to vote?
Do we have to vote to support it and then vote it down?
No.
No? Okay.
Don't support.
Who's the second?
Resolution 2, the vote is to not endorse Resolution 2.
No, who's the second?
Oh, the second was Mr.
Yes,
Morgan.
vote is to not endorse.
So now we vote no.
Yeah.
So you and Ben.
Oh, do it.
Who had no, she's having troubles tonight.
I was just reading further. Actually, I think I just voted wrong.
Okay.
What's the X?
We have one opposed, we have two opposed,
Oh, wait a minute,
and 1, 2, 3,
I think we
4.
voted
I voted
wrong.
no, because it's the way,
It's the no.
That's what I
'cause it
just
was no.
asked.
I was confused, so we might
Okay.
have to
So
revote.
revote.
I was confused.
I think we're gonna have to
We can-
Yeah,
revote.
it's the way that it was proposed and the
Okay.
way
So
the
it's gotta
motion
be
went.
yes,
It's
that
two
we-
different.
I was voting
Like-
yes
Going
to
to,
oppose
going
it.
to have a
I
revote.
We will
wanted
vote
Yeah.
no to
support it.
oppose it.
were-
So
So
we got
what
flip
should
our
we
vote.
be
Right.
voting to oppose it?
Okay, so
In
I
this
just sent it,
particular case-
I just sent it to a revote.
Yes.
Can you erase that?
Yes.
In this
He did.
particular case, the motion is to not support the resolution. So if you vote yes, you're voting not to support the resolution.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
okay, got it.
Now we got it.
Okay. So yes, not to support, no to support.
You and I got a
Just the
little bit
opposite.
out of
So,
it.
okay, so-
We're good now.
Wacky.
Trouble over here.
Now,
Okay,
seems to be
we
opposite.
have one abstention. Everybody
Oh,
else,
no.
maybe one opposed. Everybody else has voted to not support the resolution. Resolution number 3, please.
Yes, resolution number 3 is to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education and combine it with another federal organization. And I oppose this. My concern is that if that is done, I don't want to lose the emphasis of the Department of Education at the federal level, and I think it would be detrimental to the states across the country. And I believe that we may not agree wholeheartedly with things that happen from the U.S. Department of Education, but we have made great strides with grants, great strides with opportunities that have been put on the plate with great organization with the current structure. So my premise is I think things are workable and can be tweaked, but I don't think it
Okay.
would be wise to eliminate it.
So on this case, if we had a motion, a yes vote, depending on the motion, of course, a yes vote would be to reject the notion of combining the departments.
Yeah.
Is there a motion? Ms. Hunt,
I move
to support
to
resolution number
support
3,
resolution number 3.
which is to reject the notion of combining.
Yes.
Is there a second? Mr. Selly is the second. Is there a question? Okay, we shall vote.
Now, wait a minute, now.
Motion to reject, so yes.
Yes, okay.
Everybody voted in favor of supporting MASC on resolution number 3. Resolution number 4, which is the last one we're going to do tonight.
Yes,
Estes.
this resolution is for regional school transportation, and this is relative to the comment I made earlier. In years past, regional school districts were eligible for additional credit for Chapter 70 because they are identified as regional. That has been eliminated. It was eliminated probably 10 years ago. This is not the first time this resolution has been on the table for consideration. I believe that it has passed in years past at the MASC floor. The only reason why I'm supporting this is we have a similar situation in Plymouth, and I would hope that the discussion would focus in on geographic obligations that communities have, not necessarily just regional, but the Plymouth Public Schools, as I mentioned before, has a significant
The consolidation.
transportation system that's larger than most regional structures.
It's opposition.
And it'd be nice if they'd look at obligation of transportation, not necessarily just the regional nature of an entity.
So,
Would you advise us to add an amendment to include that?
I would think it would be in the best interest of the Plymouth Public Schools. We have over $6 million in transportation costs on a yearly basis, and we travel over 450 miles a day on our transportation. So if regional school districts do qualify, I think there should be some level of addition to school districts that have extraordinary transportation circumstances.
Okay.
I believe that we would fit into that.
If the board decides to do that, would you just provide me with the wording, and I will put that through as an amendment?
Absolutely.
I really have a difficulty understanding this, because when you read Chapter 71, Section 7C, this resolution wants to eliminate Chapter 71, Section 7C completely. And that section of the law has several topics in it. One, the first topic addresses whether or not you should provide, the Commonwealth should provide assistance to purchase buses to run a bus program that competes with other bus programs. And the chapter says, no financial assistance shall be given to that. Makes sense. But later on, it says, and I think it's hard to understand, because it appears to me it's saying later on that if a school system creates its own bus system, that you could get financial assistance for that if all you did was transport students. You didn't do anything else with, we started to buy buses. How many do we own? We own a few buses.
We own 8 buses.
Right, well, we guess we would never own 100 buses, but the point is, if we eliminate that possibility of getting any assistance.
And I think that brings up another point to Mrs. Hunt's mindset or thought of maybe an amendment. There are some provisions in this chapter that may still be of value.
I believe so.
So maybe an amendment to add language for extraordinary circumstances that certain districts may have, and also not eliminate the full extent of this
Chapter 71,
Chapter
Section
71.
7C.
Yeah, because before with the busing, they paid regional school districts, but
Yes,
they never
did.
paid us.
No, they didn't.
So
Well,
how
better
do we
than
know
some
we'll
regional
ever do it,
districts.
get it? That's another problem.
Right. Well, I think with the history of resolutions at MASC, it is more of shedding light and providing information for
Starting the
legislators
discussion.
to have
Yeah.
some level of background on these topics. So it's a position statement.
So it's possible then we could pass a motion
To
To amend.
amend the resolution to not eliminate Chapter 71, Section 7C
In its
Yeah.
entirety.
in its entirety. Because I'll read you that section. This section shall not apply to an applicant with respect to the operation of a school bus program if the applicant operates a school system in the area being served. So what that really means is you could have and then you could get financial assistance for that. And we already have 8 buses. Maybe we get financial assistance for 8 buses based on this.
Well, for example, a neighboring school district, they have about 25 buses. Technically, they run it on their own. They would qualify for some level of reimbursement.
According to that.
According to that, I know they don't. I know they do not get reimbursement.
Not get it, yeah.
What triggers that? But I would hate to lose that if there was another mechanism to
Yeah,
cause
but
that to happen.
they didn't ever do it before. Why will they do it now, That's what scares me on it.
Can I make
Ms. Hunt? Sure.
I'd like to move that, since we're going to discuss the rest of these at the next meeting, that possibly we can have some wording with a rationale that I can bring forth to the floor for this, and then we can vote on that.
We can work on it on Saturday, actually.
Okay, all right. Everybody, that okay with everybody to hold this one as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah,
Who's our delegate this year?
Me.
Okay.
I think
Oh,
The alternate, who's the alternate? Lee?
Okay, so you're gonna be,
always
you'll be
me,
there
yeah.
anyway.
It's gonna, well, that's why I'm the one that's gonna have to stand up and do this, but I think it's
Okay.
important.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
And now we skip the
Now we'll
smart
skip
goals.
the SMART goals to the next meeting. Anything to say on fundraising this evening? All right, good. Proposals and proposals from committee members. I have two quick ones to bring up. The conference, the National School Board Conference is going to be in Philadelphia. Is that where it is, Philadelphia?
Philly.
And we need people to consider if they want to go. Some of us can't go, some of us can go.
What are the dates?
Can try.
It's March, the end of March into April 1st. What?
March 30 through April 1.
30 through April.
So perhaps committee members can think about whether they're available, and if they want to go and represent the committee there, let me know, and we can get you assigned.
Okay,
Historically, we do 2 people. We have done 3, I think.
yeah.
If you're up for re-election, you can't go. And if you went the previous year, you shouldn't go.
You and I can't go.
What?
You and I can't go.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, you and I are up for re-election.
I would like to go if,
Okay, so,
I ran for election.
so Vedna wants
You
to
go?
go, and
This
Bob went
past
last
year,
year.
so-
Yeah.
So you
It
can
looks
go.
like we have,
I can go, yeah.
Margie can go.
you, well, we have Vedna and Kim, and are you interested?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Philly's not too bad.
Yeah, I think we have our 3 volunteers.
it would only be one day of work.
Oh,
would have to
I
miss.
forgot about Michelle.
Oh, Michelle might.
Yeah.
She went last year as well, too.
You guys went to
last year.
Texas last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you guys coordinate with Nancy about getting registered? Okay,
Are we gonna,
Where is it?
that was easy. What?
the legislative conference too, though, I wanted.
Yeah, that came up at the last meeting. One other thing under reports and proposals, I mentioned this to Bob on the break. You know, we do these on the road, we go to the schools,
Yeah.
and we go on the road. And Bob points out, and I think appropriately, that people who can't get back in town at the end never get to do that. So we're looking at the possibility of doing a visit to a school on, have to be a non-school committee night. So if you're interested in doing that, and you're willing to go out another night, let me know, and we'll see if we can set up one of the schools at nighttime. And it would be a non-school committee night, because we cannot do the meeting from the school. It's too difficult.
No, it's
to
too
pull off.
difficult,
It's
yeah.
hard. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
And what were you saying about the legislative conference?
Did anybody think about wanting to go to
I
that?
brought it up a couple of meetings ago. Nobody said they wanted to go. When is that?
January.
January.
Well,
Is that the one in
Is that the
DC?
one in
Yeah.
DC? One in DC?
I mean,
You were the last
I
one to
just,
go, I think, right?
I just,
I'd
I
love
mean,
to
I'd
go,
like
but
to
I
go
don't
to
think I can.
the school board's conference,
really
but
good.
I should go
No,
to
because
both
because I'm up for re-election. Can I go to that or no?
in
Is it
January.
only the?
Oh, no, yeah.
National conference?
I think it's only the national conference because the election comes right after.
might be able to go.
We'll dialogue that among ourselves, and maybe we come up with somebody. All right.
We're gonna talk
Okay.
about it later, okay?
Anything else under reports and proposals from committee members? All right, thank you. Building committee report
Oh, yeah.
in its briefest form.
And it was a longer meeting. Oh,
Just the
you
important
did-
stuff.
So, anyway, the marine facility, they got $1 billion from the state. They did not get the grant that they wanted, so they're working on it with the one and going for other grants. And, but it should be done by the end of summer 2019. Plymouth South High School, he talked about it, but I'll just say what they said. One detention basin is to be refinished and restoring the staging area. And it should all be done, the contractor should be off the site by the end of October, am I right? Okay. And the MSBA would be signing off hopefully by the end of the year. So, and the Russell Street deck parking, the upper deck cement is already being poured next Thursday, and then the other floor on October 30th. It will be mostly finished by the end of the year, except for the spring landscaping, so, yeah, it'll be done in the spring. Let's see, the Library roof chiller skylight replacement, it's on hold until town meeting. They're hoping that there's an article at town meeting to fund it. And the fire station construction should begin in the spring. Demolition of the house on the property is already done. The roof had to be redesigned because of the height overage. And they have add-ons of radiant heat, fuel tank, both gas and diesel, and an epoxy floor. New town hall, we went all over about the poor eagle and saw pictures of him and all that. He's really having a hard time. And anyway, they're working on the eagle, and somebody in Cohasset and in Nantucket. It's quite a project, I guess. So anyhow, and there's a big clock at the Cottage that was from the Cottage building in Building 2. It's electric, but it's a different kind. I don't know, but it's big, huge, long thing, and it's going to be fixed and restored for the courtroom in the town hall. Other projects, the construction's slowly underway on the airport building, the new Public Works building for the DPW. That would be, they've got, Ted Gentry, who's the OPM, JB and Pam are working on the schematic design for spring. And the salt shed, nothing, they've got to start over. And the White Horse Beach, they're talking about now looking into a nitrogen reducing system for septic. That's it.
Thank you for that report. Always thorough, as usual. Homeschool program.
Homeschooling plan. Tonight, we have one homeschool plan that has been reviewed by Dr. Halpin's office, and it meets the guidelines set forth by this committee, and I recommend approval.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation? Ms. Burgess accepts the motion. Second, Mr. Selly. Any questions? All right, we will vote on that recommendation.
I'm still on reports and proposals. It didn't move forward. Wait a minute.
Join the meeting.
Join the meeting, yeah.
I
Easiest
was
way.
already joined.
Join us.
I'll join it again, I guess. Okay, now I'll move it up. Huh.
Look at
All
that.
right, guys, we're going to have to get better on this technology stuff. All right, everybody voted in favor. The warrants this evening, Ms. Hunt.
Whereas school committee members have been provided with a copy of the cost center transfer and transaction summary report and the warrant for review, I move that the Plymouth School Committee accept and approve the report and accounts payable warrant number S-101-818 dated October 18, 2018, in the amount of $730,956.05 as presented.
There's your motion. Who's the second? Ms. Burgess is the second. Any questions? All right, let's vote on that one. Everybody voted in favor, thank you. Okay, I think we will hold the minutes. We won't do them this evening because it's getting late. And Saturday morning, we can do the minutes Saturday morning, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
do it. Sounds
Any
good.
other business to come before the committee? I see no hands. We stand adjourned. Thank you.